Seeing it is 10 o'clock, we will reconvene from closed session. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, the governing body of all other special assessment and taxing districts for which said board so acts, is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. I'm sorry.
Okay, Gary. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning and welcome everyone today. Do we have introduction of new employees to the Board of Supervisors today?
Yes, we do.
Big smile
It's
on
my
your face.
privilege to indicate to you that Jeff Mitchell has accepted a position of building inspector with the county. He's a local architect and has experience in the building trades, and we're very pleased to have him. I'd like to have him come forward to say hello to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How do you not smirk?
You mean we're not smirking?
We all know you.
That's my point.
Welcome aboard.
Living in a small
Good
town.
morning. Thank you.
Glad to have you on board.
Thank
Yes.
You bet.
Yes.
Good to have you, Jeff.
you. Interesting. It's already been interesting, so
I'll
I'm
bet.
sure there'll be lots of other challenges in front of us.
So you got your speech ready for you?
My speech?
Yeah.
I've already been hazed several
have you?
times, so no speeches.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Welcome. Report of any actions from closed session?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. At this time, I request any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, that matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. And before I go on any further, speaking of the next regular meeting, there will not be a second Board of Supervisors meeting this month. With the holidays and the preparation time needed prior to the next board meeting, it's just not going to happen. Okay. Right. Item number 3 has been pulled from our agenda today. That is the public hearing. Did you have, oh, okay. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. Any public comment
It's not.
today? Huh?
It's not time.
You gonna wait?
We're gonna be not time all morning because of cancellations. So, yes, we could. Let's just start with brief reports with Supervisor Finnegan.
Brief reports,
Brief,
but we need to waste so much time.
yeah. But these are never brief.
No,
We
that's
always
true.
run over.
Well, we'll try to be brief. The last couple of weeks or since our last meeting, most of my time was taken up with a couple of state association meetings. One was the Regional Council of Rural Counties, and one was the State Association, the County State Association of Counties, CSAC. CSAC had its annual conference in San Francisco, and I think Supervisor Sullivan, who was also there, will report on several of the meetings. A lot of keynote speakers, and then also different workshops that pertain to counties, whether it was on realignment, whether it was on redistricting, budgeting, how to do more with less, and how to cooperate with other communities and other counties. The first general session started out with Willie Brown. We had some good speakers. We had Willie Brown, who started it, and we had Jerry Brown, who ended it, and a few other Browns in between, I think Valerie and some others. But Willie Brown is quite an entertainer, and if you've ever had an opportunity to listen to him speak, then you know what I'm talking about. But the theme was a bridge to reform, but the theme of the speakers was leadership, and where do you find it? Anybody can take a look at the legislature at the state level or Congress and see ineptness and really see that the perception that the job is not being done. so it falls to the locals, and you don't want to have that same perception with your constituents. And of course, all politics is local. So he started out with, of course, when they talked about term limits and how damaging that was, and how the whole culture of leadership has been forced to change, that it's more party politic, that it's you're busy running for your next job rather than really trying to affect change. The party lines are probably more solid than they ever have been. The art of compromise is not there. The art of getting the job done and paying attention to your constituents and what you should be doing is not the priority. And so he says, well, the only way to affect that change then really where most of the communities don't have term limits is at the local level. And so that challenge went out, and I'm sure Mike will talk a little bit more about that. There was some other speakers, and they had the same thing to do with leadership. There was a speaker that talked about new social media, and whether you saw it in the Middle East with some of their demonstrations or you see it with Occupy Wall Street, the social media of the internet to mobilize people, to start a campaign is there. The way we talk to people is differently. Who it allows to be the leaders, the more grassroots is there. There was a speaker who was in the Twin Towers on the 78th floor when the planes hit, and he was blind. And he talked about trusting one another and what it means to be part of a team, even though in this case it was just him and his blind dog, and how they survived. And he could not have unless he relied on somebody else. Great speaker. Some other motivational speakers about leadership and what it means to be a leader, and and rather than focusing on what is not being done, and rather than looking to blame whether it's Congress or whether it's the state assembly or state senate, whether it's our own legislature, focusing on what it is you want. And we're doing a lot of that in our community already. And we've been doing it for a long time, seeking partnerships. But you focus on what you want, and then you figure out how to get there. And it means compromise. It means communication. But along with that, there has to be a leader. And that's the challenge to us, but it's also the challenge to the constituency, is to change that culture of just being a follower and being a leader, but being a leader that takes into account the needs and wants and desires of the community with a little visioning rather than just your own selfish goals. So it was rather inspiring. And then, of course, Governor Brown, he ended up tying it all together. He said he loves county people and doesn't like city people. Of course, it was after a couple of glasses of wine, I think, but I paraphrase there. Really is what he was doing is telling that CSAC has been a partner. The counties have been a partner in trying to create the solution for what needs to happen with the budget, whether it's with realignment or some of the other programs that are going on. And the League of Cities is all they're doing is complaining about we want more money. And so it's really a selfishness versus, at least that's his perception. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, though, versus the partnership with the county. We also talked about, we had board of directors meetings where we had the coastal counties participated in that, the rural county caucus, of course, which I chair, and then we had our elections. I was fortunate enough to be moved up, selected by the rural caucus to be their delegate as an officer, and then voted by the entire group to be the first vice president of the State Association of Supervisors. So the access that provides to Del Norte County is something else. Again, even if it's as simple as sitting down to dinner with the governor and talking about the new AB 109 regulations, that there is a flaw. And the flaw is that even though it's a non, is what that does is it allows the DAs to charge for the full penalty and the judges to execute the full penalty in the sentence and do them concurrent instead of, or excuse me, consecutive instead of concurrent. So, which normally would have been plea bargained down to either 3 years in state prison or 2 years in county jail, is now turning out to be 15 years in county jail. And he said that needs to be changed. So he listens. And we know he listens because when he makes a speech later that night, he mentions Del Norte County. So it's on his brain, and we're going to keep it there. But anyway, very, very good, productive meeting down there. And, of course, personally rewarding as well. Then had a Regional Council of Rural Counties meeting, RCRC, which focuses more specifically on issues with the rurals. We focused on some of the legislation and the regulation. AB 885, the septic tank regulations, they're getting better. The problem is going to be in the future is that for us, it's not going to be one size fits all. We won that war. It's going to go to not the state water board, but the regional water boards. And if the regional water boards listen to the communities and let the communities design their plans, we'll be fine. So that's where our due diligence is going to happen, is making sure that the local boards don't get out of control. The State Water Resources Control Board, municipal and industrial stormwater permits, even the director says that the permit process is flawed. So they're going to go back to, they suspended them all, they're going to, or suspended the process right now, they're going to go back to the drawing board and rework that. They're going to redraft the permits and the permit process, so another win there. Not so much a win on the state responsibility fire areas. They've gone overboard now and even expanded the definition of habitable to include government buildings. So stay tuned for that. And I hate to say stay tuned for that because come June, the Board of Equalization is going to be sending out tax bills to the majority of the people in Del Norte County and state responsibility areas. There will be lawsuits, but we'll keep you more informed on that as we go forward. Proposed building standards, they're now starting to look at the electrical, the plumbing. They've already looked at some of the fire. They're also, unfortunately, looking at access. So it's like the group doesn't know what to do because they sort of did the sprinkler in the green building and now they're going to have to do something else. And so access roads is going to be a big deal. We had reports from the Legislative Committee that talked about combined use roads, AB 628 implementation, which is the county maintained roads, and the dual use. And the test case there is, I believe, Mono County. And you're allowed 3 miles, and they're going for 10 miles. So we're going to take a look at that and see how their report comes back from their pilot project, and perhaps we can look at doing the same thing. And that's to use off-road vehicles on county-maintained roads.
Was that Inyo County?
Is it Inyo?
I think it was Inyo. Inyo submitted a bill, Connie,
Conway, you're right.
yeah.
Yes.
Inyo County, yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. There is also the Surface Transportation Reauthorization. It's a 2-year bill, $85 billion. It's consistent with what it was in the past. There's going to be a $12 billion short fund in the trust fund. We've talked about this before, so that's the gas tax. Anyway, a lot of fun stuff that the legislature is working on. Fortunately, they have a whole year to try to impact our lives, and it's our job, again, coming full circle, to be leaders, to make sure that they impact us in a beneficial way or that they don't impact us in a negative way, and that we are in position in this county to be heard, and we have seats at the table. So I'll end it by saying to all, since I won't have the opportunity later, wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and peace and prosperity to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finnegan, and congratulations
Thank you.
on your CSAC appointment. Supervisor McClure?
Yes, I agree with David that we've got some great opportunity right now in Del Norte County. If the rest of the country would be working like Del Norte County is right now, we would probably not be as big of a pickle as we're in, because we've been diligent with our budgeting and our program planning and our partnerships, and that's what's keeping our ball moving up the hill. And so I think that we've been doing a pretty good job. So in the last couple of weeks, our CTA met with the transportation, and it's right on a very fine line as far as budgeting, but we're going to make it through this year, and then we're going to be able to probably purchase a new bus next year. So that's going to work. I attended the Point St. George final discussion on the coastal walk, the coastal trail. So we're going to be able to hopefully see that move forward. Maybe even sometime in January, we may get to see the trail flagged, so people will have an idea of where the trail is going. The senior board met, and we're on solid ground at this point for funding, so that West Chesbro stepped in and gave us assistance to make sure that the funding is there, so the nutrition program will continue and the day-to-day operating will continue. So that's a really good thing. I attended my Coastal Commission meeting, and I can announce that we are making great headway in the local coastal plan discussion. And I think that there's a paradigm shift that you can see happening at the Coastal Commission, of people wanting a more reasonable approach to how permits are granted and what's happening, at the same time protecting the coast and guaranteeing that people have access, but that the day's not spent on arguing the possibility of a 3-foot fence as opposed to a 3.5-foot fence and holding someone's permit for a year. So it's that kind of movement. In fact, there was a man who had a house that he is over $200,000 that he's paid so far in just trying to get the permit on a legal lot. And it was a glitch within Santa Cruz County that someone had found an ability to make the appeal and ask for a de novo. And a de novo means that your project is put off for at least one more year. And it was going to be on the back of the homeowner, of the person that's just trying to build a regular house in a regular neighborhood. And the commission found that there was no substantial issue and did not turn it to de novo. So to me, that was a shift that happened, because it was no longer going to be on the back of the individual. It was a glitch that the county had that they needed to fix on their own zoning issue, not it wasn't a coastal issue. So it's that kind of thing that I see going on at Coastal, that I really believe that we're going to push it back towards a more reasonable group, where the job is more reasonable. One of the discussions that we're having is if you have a bluff house, the question becomes, if you're living on a bluff on the coast and you do a 50% increase on the exterior, then that house now becomes required to meet current setbacks. So in essence, the house would actually have to be moved back, because most of the bluff houses are not within the setback. But Coastal is attempting at this point to say also, if it were a 50% improvement interior, not a change in the footprint, but an interior change, that would also trigger the new setback requirements. And so I'm pushing that one hard back, because I think that if the footprint doesn't change, we can't be asking people to move their 120-year-old house back 40 feet. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of bluff properties are too narrow anyway to meet that setback. So it's those kind of discussions, but the commission is actually engaged in those discussions. And it's a pretty exciting group that they're really trying to solve some problems. So that's pretty much what I did. And then I would also ask that the board concur with me that we send a letter to Congressman Thompson applauding his position on the illegal marijuana grows in the national forest and on national lands, because of the environmental damage that they're doing. I don't know if people read, but there were like hundreds, there was something like 40 miles of plastic pipe in Mendocino National Forest, not to mention all of the chemicals that are being used and the illegal grading that's going on. And he's trying to push back, and I think that we should support his position on that. So I'm hoping that the board would agree to send a letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sullivan?
Yeah, I had the meeting with Ruwidi Wiki, who's working with the California Endowment Humboldt Area Foundation regarding some school district reform that's on the table right now. Spent Thanksgiving with the family in Napa, out of town. Then attended CSAC annual conference with Supervisor Finnegan in San Francisco, and congratulations to Supervisor Finnegan on he he's the first vice president, which means one step away from being in charge of the California State Association of Counties. So it's to give you an idea is the rest of us were sitting at the table behind the governor, and Dave was sitting at the governor's table for dinner. So it's good to have that connection there. And Governor Brown is pronouncing it correctly too. It's Del Norte instead of Del Norte. So, and you run into other supervisors down there, and I had a conversation with Supervisor Morlock out of Orange County, and and he's been through here, but I had to correct him to say, well, don't say Del Norte when you come in because people will know you're from out of town. So it was actually really cool to the conversation of the different speakers. Willie Brown's obviously was the most entertaining, and it was definitely a different perspective on before term limits passed, the effectiveness of the legislator to go out and do stuff, and now it's just caused this logjam and a lot more partisanship than existed 20 years ago. So it was interesting to hear his perspective on that, and I think the funniest story was that when he became, I think it was the governor, or not the mayor of Oakland, that he got a call from a constituent at 2:30 in the morning saying her lights were out and so he went down and fired the guy in charge of the that wasn't union, hired the guy that was in charge of electricity, and then he told the replacement, call me as soon as those lights are back on. So he did, and he at 2:30 in the morning he got up and called that constituent back and said, your lights are back on. So anyway, it was a pretty interesting perspective, and more of a can-do, and like Dave said, more compromise and the ability to actually get things done than where we're at right now. Definitely a different perspective on stuff. Had at the conference, had more than a few meetings, and one of them was dealing with the Housing, Land Use, Transportation Policy Committee. And one of the things that on the infrastructure in California, to bring it up to just to maintain it, the projection is that they'd need almost $200 billion to bring it up to code. So the question is, with that, the question I had, and it looks like they're about only 43% funded to do that. And the question is, well, if you prioritize your projects and said some of these are before a bridge falls on somebody, if there's higher urgency projects, why not streamline the environmental and the prevailing wage and put it out for private bid, and let's see what the actual cost is, because that's a question they couldn't answer is how much would it actually cost if you streamline some of this stuff to actually get it done? And if it is a priority item, then that urgency or that emergency should elevate projects to the top. So for some reason that just seems to get danced around instead of coming back to what does it actually take to actually fix these things. The other thing is we had a California Coastal Counties Association, which is kind of a small subcommittee of CSAC, and the supervisor out of Humboldt County, Mark Lovelace, wanted the California Coastal Counties Association to take a position which is opposite of what this board did in terms of supporting the Klamath Basin Restoration Act. And there was a lot of misinformation given to the committee or to the association. Unfortunately, they chose not to take a stance on it, and if they would support it or oppose it, they do it individually instead. But that type of stuff, that's why we really need to be at these things, to make sure that people aren't, one, they're getting the correct information, and two, that our interests are represented there as well. One of the big issues that's on the table, and Governor Brown's been mentioning also, is pension reform. That is one of the big things out there to be able to get it so it's sustainable. And I think that's what we heard more than anything else. There has to be some structural changes to the pension plan to be able to have it sustain itself. And then of course we had a conversation about the realignment constitutional protections update. There more than likely will be a ballot initiative to vote on to actually protect the counties, allowing the counties to have a source of revenue dedicated to offset what the state is actually pushing back on our shoulders on the prisoners being relocated. Other than that, locally had conversation with a lot of constituents up on Low Divide. There continues to be issues in terms of what insurance companies are doing now in terms of the premiums double and tripling in some case because considering them a higher fire hazard, even though they do have Smith River Fire Department protection. So we're going through the process now of possibly getting the underwriters up here so they can actually see the area instead of Google Earthing it and assessing fees based on that. So that's going to be an ongoing issue. I'm happy. Thank you, staff and Tina, on submitting the application for possibly getting part of Low Divide paved and fixed. And Rosanna, thank you very much on working and bringing that to. Other than that, my son turned 10 last week, and so that was interesting. 24 10-year-old boys, and at one place is interesting to say the least. So yeah, it was a lot of energy. So.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes. You had a LAFCO meeting, a local agency formation commission meeting, which we continue to stay under budget. And I say it over and over. I'm just so happy that we have the executive director that we do have. He's very informative, keeps up on everything. A lot of information to the commission itself, so we're able to make decisions based on factual information. So it's really good to have that kind of leadership. Had a meeting with Stuart Knox, who is the director of NORTEC. He came over. He just came over to oversee the tsunami workforce. They had a couple of issues that they thought were going to be major that ended up being fairly minor, I think, and they got them all taken care of. So my understanding is they got them all taken care of, but we'll know at the next NORTEC meeting. Had an RC&D meeting, which includes the 5-county Salmonid group, which we'll get a report from Mark Lancaster on the 5-county stuff. There wasn't much going on for RCD, but 5 counties seems to be doing quite a little bit of stuff. Had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting where we approved our EIR and submitted that, so things are moving along on the RSA project. That's the runway safety area project. It's my first meeting with Misha, who is, man, what a smart guy he is. He seems to really know that environmental stuff inside and out. He's a great asset for our team, so it was nice to meet him and nice to hear from him. We had a meeting that included Kevin Hamblin out at the Lake Earl Grange on RS 2477 roads that we're working on a process to include some of those roads and get them under the RS 2477 jurisdiction. Had several meetings with constituents regarding solid waste, talking about some of their concerns and what they'd like to see happen. So we'll have to see how that all plays out in the next meetings. Had a meeting with some ranchers out from the Smith River area. Fish and Game has evidently wanted to take jurisdiction over some of the ag ditches and call them fish-bearing streams, which puts a lot of restriction on by the time you get through with buffers and what the requirements are to be around a fish-bearing stream as opposed to an ag ditch. Pretty onerous on these ranchers and farmers, so hopefully we get that, hopefully get a meeting with Fish and Game, we get that squared away. And yesterday had a local mental health board meeting where, I started out when I was first elected supervisor, I started out on mental health board, and the progress I think that mental health has made, just in my short period of time has been phenomenal. I think, Gary, I think you're doing a great job, and I think just the transition, the way things have progressed from when I started to what they are now, I think is a huge difference, and for the better. I think, we're doing more with less, doing a better job, just in the different programs. So I think that's a great thing. And along with that, we took a little tour of the new transitional age youth offices that are going to be right next door to mental health. It was all in all a good meeting. And that's about, well, let's see, I went to Thanksgiving in McLeod. where we got a little bit of snow, so that was all good. I got my flu shot, so I'm good to go.
I will be very brief. Only a couple of meetings that I had scheduled were canceled. I did miss LAFCO, which I needed to call George and apologize for because I totally spaced it. Didn't even have it in my daily planner. Tomorrow I will be leaving for my last trip to Sacramento for the CMSP board. I've been on that board for 3 years, and I'm tired of driving to Sacramento. I'm glad that one's ending, even though I really learned a lot being on that board. And I thank you, Gary, for your help when I've needed it also, because that was one major learning curve. CMSP, for those who don't know, is County Medical Services Program. And a lot has happened since I've been on that board. We're transitioning into newer programs, trying to get ready for 2014. The low-income health program is now, is it up and running? Gary, it's, okay, I thought it was, anyway, that I think looks promising also. And had agenda review for this meeting, and that's about it. Seeing it is 10:30, and we had a public hearing scheduled at that time. It had been pulled from the agenda, but someone informed me that it looks like everybody was here. Is everybody here for this? Jay, do you know?
Yeah, I believe both sides of the parties are, but perhaps the Jerry or Louise could formally ask for it to be postponed.
Okay. I thought it was the other parties, and then when I saw that they were here, I thought.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
At this time, we'd like to withdraw the TPZ rezone. We met with Mr. Baskin and his attorney, Mr. Warner, yesterday. Jerry is also in on this project. And they brought up some questions that they felt that some of the procedures, we may have to go through CEQA. We've been talking about there may be amendments that can be brought into their original conservation easement. So at this time, we'd like to take the next 2 or 3 months to give them the opportunity to bring forward any thing that can alleviate our feeling that there should be a rezone for this particular parcel. So,
Okay, thank you, Louise. Then we will not open public hearing. That will be pulled, and you'll let us know when it is going to be back on the agenda. So at this time, we will have public comment because we're going to have lots of time, Richard, before our next timed presentation.
My name's Richard Miles, and I'm here today to make a couple of requests. And why I'm asking for these requests is that I definitely believe that there's been times where I've been the only private citizen to attend these meetings. And without public input, it's hard for you people sometimes to make decisions. I'd like to request that this board, the Board of Supervisors, consider next year to go back to evening meetings. A lot of the public work during the daytime and can't take off from work or from babysitting their kids or whatever to come to these meetings. Also, something upset me in the Daily Triplicate on Saturday. Not too long ago, a gentleman came here, made a request of you people, and he wrote a very interesting letter in the newspaper. This is the gentleman that wants to promote more dispensaries and medical marijuana in Del Norte County. I found his letter lacking in some logical conclusions. Also, the next day, I picked up a Time Standard and read how Humboldt County is addressing the problem of medical marijuana in Humboldt County. One of the things that bothers me, and I'm aware of this, and I hope somebody would look into it, a number of our low-income people go to the senior citizens and apply for assistance through Pacific Power for assistance with their power bills. But at the same time, they're going to some of our local businesses and purchasing 1,500-watt light globes so they can have growth houses in Delaware County. I think there needs to be some controls, either through our planning department or something, on the wattage of light globes for in-house growth, because I think Jack Reese was wrong when he made the contention that you could have a square this big and grow X number of plants.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period and move to the consent agenda. Do we have any?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion.
Item 6 been pulled earlier.
Would you like to pull item 6?
Yeah.
Would you like-
I move
actually
to
requested.
approve the consent agenda,
But I
pulling
can't
item
do
6.
that until.
Okay.
There's no second.
No. We have no second on the consent agenda with item number 6 pulled. I think this is a first.
Well, since the chair doesn't want to second it, I will.
Thank you. And that's with item 6 pulled. Do you have a question on the? Okay,
Now would be good.
right now. Yes.
My name is Chris McCullum. I'm the Executive Director of the Del Norte Child Care Council, and I have some information I'd like to hand you first.
Thanks, Chris.
Am I supposed to have 2?
No.
You can give me one.
Thanks. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for being able to talk to you about the contract for child care services with the county. Regarding the handout, my comments are items that I've mentioned to the department head before, and so hopefully these are not surprises. The timeline of the contract process, I wanted to draw attention to that. Basically, the state budget was approved in May and June. Somewhere in there, we knew that the child care allocation for Del Norte County would be approximately a 25% reduction. And they actually had a bulletin from the State Department of Social Services describing the allocation in August. And you can see from the timeline that we actually met in October, and it appears that there's an administrative allocation for the 12-month fiscal period. The thing that concerns me is that this is the first time in 30 years, 30 plus years, that we are experiencing an administrative split. 6 months at one percentage, 6 months at another lesser, significantly lesser percentage. And at that time in October, we were told that there would be approximately 75 children eligible for stage 1 care. We were also told that there was a triage process to help prioritize the need. As you can see from the rest of the timeline, we are nowhere near earning that administrative enrollment, administrative allocation. And in fact, we just submitted our projections for January based on referrals and the 15% level, and we have been advised that we're probably going to earn about $1,600 for doing the service. And I just think that that's not reasonable for us. On the reverse side of the timeline, I printed a copy of the counter offer I made in October, and I want to draw your attention to the 5th paragraph where I mentioned that all of our other child care contracts have guaranteed administrative earnings. That is, if 50 kids walk in the door or 500 kids walk in the door, we know exactly what we're going to earn by June 30th. And so I've asked for that same sort of guarantee for us so I can function as an agency. And even though the department hasn't agreed to do it, they did not really take action on it. So I'm bringing that to the board. I also want to recall that in January 2011, we came to you with a contract for stage 1 child care, and that is the fiscal year where the legislature didn't pass their budget until October. So I can understand that delay, but this year that budget was approved and the allocations were made in June. And I think all of us knew what we were getting into with this new fiscal year state budget. The reason this is so critical to me is because we are going to be affected by the December 15th trigger cuts. $17 million of child care is going to fall off the table on top of what we've already lost. I don't know, no one in Sacramento has told me what the impact is going to be on Del Norte County. So the combination of this contract on a local level and the other state contracts I have are causing a great deal of concern within my organization. You can see that we haven't even gotten, about a fifth of what we could potentially earn as of November 30th. And so I'm very concerned about my capacity to earn the rest of the administrative funds by June 30th, 2012. Suggestion, extend the current administration allocation through the first quarter of the fiscal year, of the calendar year, have us reassess in spring, see how the state's budget is affecting child care. So anyway, obviously I'm not going to walk away from the contract because we really need it, but I would actually appreciate better terms. And that's, if anybody has any questions.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And maybe Gary's going to want to answer too, because you contract through social services. Is this the first year we're doing that split 25-15? And what was it?
Yes.
What was it in the past?
25.
25 the whole year?
Yeah. And one of the challenges is we don't get our money till after the services are conducted. So that is, I expend a month's worth of staff time and, activity, and if the referrals don't come in, if the clients don't show for their appointments, we're poised and ready to work with them. If something goes sideways, I've expended staff time and on behalf of stage 1, and I don't get paid.
So is this, in the past years, have you budgeted what that allocation could be, and so you're asking you need to budget for the $53,000 this year as well?
I just need assurance. If we get all of our referrals, if we get a stampede in January, I'll be delighted. I just need to know from my agency's budgeting that I will indeed get that allocation by the end of June. And Gary has assured me that it is the intent of the department to fully expend those funds. I got to tell you, I really need it.
How was it dealt with in the past differently?
It's just the administrative percentage.
Okay. So
You know, and, I mean, they're dealing with
as far as the guarantee
25%.
went in the budgeting process, that's virtually the same as just the administrative? Okay.
Yeah, and, you know, like I said, I can understand years when the state doesn't tell us what we're going to get until October, but we all knew what it was going to be even as late as August. So,
Supervisor McClure has a question for you.
Why are the referrals so down?
they had a 25% reduction in their child care allocations, and that means there are fewer eligible children. That's my understanding.
The referrals had to go down, and we had to reduce the amount of referrals we made to them because of the budget cuts. And once we were assured of our allocations, which takes a while after the state approves the budget, then we could move forward. So then we had some discussions, and we looked at the need to, as much as possible, with the now reduced, after 2 years in a row of reduced child care funding, provide as much as we could for those families to keep them working or encourage them to work or go to school. So we negotiated a new administrative rate, which is not uncommon around the state. When you don't have the funds to provide child care services, then you must, by law, exempt the families from the requirements of going to work or going to school to receive your benefits. So we were forced, of course, like a lot of counties, to reduce the requirements. So families did not have to go to school or work, and they could continue to receive their aid. So what happened was, once we negotiated a new contract, we knew about our rates, we were able to now, and we're doing this, increase our referrals back into Child Care Council. So first we had to reduce them. We continue to reduce them. Now we're starting to increase them. And in fact, we just now are comparing notes, and it looks like a number of referrals that we've made are not on her list. Somehow they're not reconciled. But what we're looking at is we have about 50 some referrals, and we do expect those to increase over the next few months. And I understand her concerns, and I did attempt to communicate with her, but she was, anyway, the emails didn't connect. But we can certainly re-look at this over the next few months. We can measure and look at our numbers of referrals and see how successful we are in meeting your concern about your needs for administrative costs. If we get there, great. If we don't get there, then we'll make some adjustments, come back to the board with a number to make sure that she can reach that $52,000 number. So I think this is something that can be managed over the next few months. I'm assured that we've always worked together. We've always been able to have successful agreements. I don't see any reason why it's going to be different this year. But I do understand the anxiety. We're all living in a different environment. You mentioned cuts after the first of the year. We're going to have to consider any cuts to come to stage one as well after the first of the year. So there's a lot of factors up in the air, but we'll work it out, and we'll get there, so Child Care Council remains intact. We need them as our partners.
And I understand that. And I think we've been great partners in the past and will continue to do that. And I also understand cuts. What I don't understand is what is not cut, which is a finite number, is the $52,000, $53,000, the admin allocation for the full year. So that's budgeted in there. What I don't understand is why the percentage would change. So whether you're at 25%, 20%, or 15%, you have a finite amount of money that you're going to be able to allocate because of the reductions. Why then would we have a two-tiered administrative cost system?
The reason was so we could serve more families, so more of the child care dollars could go actually to the child care providers, so we could make sure that we had as many families as possible in our Welfare to Work program.
But that makes it look like it opens the door for skeptics. They would say that you're not going to make your referrals at 25%, you're going to wait and make them at 15%.
Oh, no.
So you're only going to be able to serve so many families anyway.
Yeah, and we could see that as a possibility, and that was not our...
And if you got to cut it, it's sort of like in real estate. If you need to cut the commissions to make it work, you do it at the end, you don't do it in the beginning.
Yeah, and that's part of why we need to go back and make sure that this works, because it's not our intention to do that at all. It's really
just a matter of the timing of negotiating the contract. It takes a while to do that. So the 25% that she is accustomed to at the Child Care Council is a carryover from last year's contract. The new contract begins the 15% rate. That 15% rate may have to continue for years to come. It really depends on, again, how severe these cuts are. What we're trying to do is, as efficiently as possible, serve as many families as we can.
Right.
Because honestly, the families want to go to work. They want to be able to go to school. They don't want to sit home and watch their children or put their children in a situation that's not a licensed child care provider. So we really want to encourage that. So this is a balancing act between taking care of the Child Care Council,
Right.
but also taking care of those families.
So what I would...
I think it'll be successful.
Yeah, and I'm encouraged that you're going to look at it. What I would advocate for is that there not be a two-tiered administrative cost percentage. If it needs to be 20%, 18%, or 22%,
That's
because you know what that final budgeted amount for the annual contract's going to be.
Exactly. That's
So
a
you
very-
say this is the percent you're going to get in an amount not to exceed, that's...
We'll work on it.
Oh, good.
We'll definitely work on that over the next few months and probably come back to you with a contract revision if it's necessary.
Madam Chair?
And that's the gist of that paragraph 5. All of my other contracts, we know going into them exactly what we're going to earn to do the work that we're being paid to do. And this is the only contract that I ever have there's flex there. So I thank you very much. I appreciate Gary's comments.
Supervisor Hammond.
I'm just totally confused because I'm asked to approve an agreement that I'm assuming is an agreement between you two that you're not agreeing to. So I'm having real difficulty with this. Either it's an agreement that we're going to approve because you agree to it, or you don't want us to agree to approve this contract. So I'm totally confused. I don't know where we're coming from here.
Okay.
This
All
first time
I'm
I've
saying,
asked
my
this
bottom line is I need that administrative allocation. And so far in 6 months, I'm only earning a tenth of it. And so I need that other assurance.
I understand
And
that,
if
but
we're-
this is the agreement that we're here to approve is in front of us here, which is an agreement that should have been worked out between you two before it comes to us, and now you're not agreeing to it. So I'm totally confused. So I don't know whether this is an item that we want to approve or to pull off the agenda or what, but I have a real issue with having an agreement that is supposedly agreed to, and then have one of the parties come in and say, wait a minute, I can't agree to this. So I'm just confused on that part.
And my obviously, I'm not going to walk away from a contract that you approve. I feel, though, that's what public comment is about, is for me to say, I made a counter offer, and I didn't get the action that I needed, and so I'm bringing it in public comment. But I'm not going to say to you, please don't pass this contract, because obviously I need the money.
So what are you asking for, the commitment of the 53?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, Gary's assured you all and now me that we will accomplish that by June 30th. And if it's the split, or if it's a solid, percentage consistent over 12 months, that's fine. My bottom line is that earning that money.
So if you're fine with this now, I would advocate that during the next quarter, that you bring us back that contract amendment with those changes of a consistent and constant percentage rate for admin, as well as verbiage that guarantees, for budgeting purposes, the amount that is to be given to you that is already allocated in our budget.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
If that can be direction.
You have public comment on this item, Richard?
Yes, and I think it's kind of...
I'm sorry, point of order here. Are we discussing this off of the consent agenda, this item?
Yeah, it was not pulled off.
I want to say this, and I hope nobody really takes offense of this. I think the director of the Child Council came up here today to talk about some members of the 99%. That's the mothers in this county who want to get off, and who have children, who want to get off welfare, either go to the College of the Redwoods and learn new skills, or try to find employment locally in an area that actually is economic impressed, where there's not a lot of jobs. Leslie asked me a question about the Christmas tree when I first came in.
Wait,
Is this a little off
the
topic?
childcare?
Yes, this is, and let me finish, Mr. Sutherland. Please gives me the courtesy to finish my 3 minutes. I feel that our Director of Social Services is kind of being Mr. Scrooge. For a number of years, there was a flat rate for the services that our Child Council provided. Because the state is cutting his budget, and this is not the only area where his budget has been cut, he wants to fiddle fart around with administration charges. I think the only vote you can take is in January, bring this issue back with the old rate to give our Child Council the funding that they can carry on a program that serves the 99% of the people in this county who needs to get off CalWorks and help them find employment. If you fiddle fart around until, let's say, March or April, she really doesn't know how she can do things. And I think it's a sign of leadership that you don't propose changing the date and bringing this back so a fair equity can be given to our Child Council.
Thank you, Richard. I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda, excluding item number 3.
Six. Three's the presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was the
Madam Chair,
public hearing.
Can I make a
Excuse me.
comment about another agenda item?
Another agenda item?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's agenda item 15. That's our, actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 15. And it's the item related to the Nutrition Expansion Pilot Project. And this is an effort that is quite unique. This is a 3-county regional effort. And I wanted to acknowledge, I think some of our friends from Trinity and Siskiyou County are going to be watching this, either now or later. And I told them that I would specifically mention some of the folks there that have been instrumental in pulling this project together. It was a quick turnaround time, and it's a great opportunity for our small counties. The state would not allocate the funds because we're too small unless we regionalized, so we went ahead and did just that. And so we are the lead for the 3 counties. And I wanted to mention in Siskiyou County, there were a number of people that were very helpful to us, including their director, Mike Noda, and Terry Barber, Deborah Walsh, and Terry Funk, Blair Loftus, David Dahlke, and Laura Leach. And we met up in Wairika, and in a very quick time pulled our projects together. Also want to thank their county council. In Trinity County, Linda Wright, their director, and Letty Garza, Carol Wong, and Morgan Talkington were very helpful in the project. And then, of course, locally, we have our team here, Dorothy Provencio and Melody Cannon, Carmen Fong Chavez, who's here in Melody, and Mark Holstead, Dorothy Waterlow, and Linda Bazzini and Lori Taylor. Especially want to thank Gretchen Sturr, our county counsel, because she wrote the contracts that the other two county councils had to agree to. And this is not an easy thing to do, to get attorneys to agree to a lot of things. And certainly this is one of them. But with a few minor adjustments, all the attorneys agreed to the contracts. That's what you have before you. And we're looking forward to this partnership with the two counties. If we're successful, we're led to believe that this funding could be ongoing, at least for another year or two. So we'll be working hard to make it successful. Thanks.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I
Yes.
ask a question on going back to number 13 in light of some public comment? Does either party, the Child Care Council or Social Services, wish to pull this contract to rework it? Or do you want to go forward with the current contract with the direction as given by the board?
You know, I'm very happy to pull it and return it to you after I meet with her. I didn't, understand her feelings about this, and I certainly want to address those.
Then if I could, Madam Chair, I'd like to pull number 13.
Is that okay with the rest of everybody? Okay, now I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda excluding items number 6 and item number 13. Anybody want to pull anything else? Okay, any other public comment on any of the consent agenda items? Seeing none, Jeremy, would you pull the vote, please?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes, except I need to recuse myself on number 16, that's why I didn't second.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes, but I have to recuse myself on item 16 due to a business relationship.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Did you?
I said yes on 16.
Okay.
Okay. We are going to have a presentation that was scheduled for 11 o'clock, but if I could just take a minute, maybe we could take the budget transfers so people that need to get back to work can. This actually lasted a little longer than I expected. I thought we were just going to whiz right through today's agenda, but
Move to approve budget transfers 11-03, 11-04, 12-01, 12-02, 12-03, 12-04, 12-05, and 12-06, listed as items 25 through 32.
there's one more on the next.
Oh, and item 12-07, item 33 on the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Would you pull the vote? Any public comment on these budget transfers? Seeing none, pull the vote, please.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes. Okay. Pardon me?
Were you pulling 6 for discussion?
6 was for discussion.
Discussion or just pulling it?
Well, I'm pulling to discuss. My concerns is I'm on the Treasury Oversight Committee, and there's, per the investment policy, we're supposed to have an annual meeting. There's been no annual meeting this year. So that would be my request, is that we have an annual meeting, and then we can bring it back to the board.
Okay, and I would just like to say that part of that has been my fault that they have not had a meeting done. You're having one tomorrow? Our treasurer tax collector had requested of me a couple of times her concerns about the appointment to the board. So I did not get back to her promptly enough for her to schedule a meeting. So I have to take some blame for that. So you're having a meeting tomorrow? Were you informed of the meeting?
I wasn't informed of the meeting at all.
You have to get the mic.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, Mr. Finnegan has been on our Treasury Oversight Committee, and we assumed that you were still on it because we had not heard otherwise, so we did send an email, and you did respond that you were going out of town, I believe, tomorrow.
Correct, yeah, I got an email a couple days ago and said I wouldn't be here.
But Mr. Sullivan is certainly welcome to come to the meeting.
I can't make that tomorrow. It's too short. I've got full schedule tomorrow.
Okay.
So, and I think we have a meeting tomorrow. What time is the Treasury Oversight?
9 o'clock.
It's going to be tight. Well, I'd be glad to meet before we have our next board meeting. That'd be fine. Pretty loose at that point in terms of schedule wise. So, I didn't have any notice of it, so.
So you were never informed of the appointment
That was, yes.
of Supervisor Sullivan on the...
Well, I guess I'm confused. I thought.
So am I.
I thought she was uneasy
That
because
was
he
the
was on it.
issues that were brought up.
No, I'm confused because I wasn't sure who's on our treasury. Like I said, Supervisor Finnegan's been on the committee for the last couple of years, and I did not know who was on it this year. I had not heard if there was a change, and so we assumed Mr. Finnegan was still on the Treasury Oversight Committee, so that's why the information was sent to him. But if that's not the case, I need to be made aware of that.
What are you saying, Jeremy? That
It was my understanding that the appointment was made and there were questions about it from your office. So I'm a little confused as well.
Yeah.
Because I believe the appointment had been made at the beginning of the year.
Okay. So you can go ahead with your meeting tomorrow, and Supervisor Sullivan would like to meet with you before the next board meeting? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I'd like to have this pulled until the next meeting. I don't see a point in voting on it today. I mean, we're not.
Is there any
That's what
urgency
there is.
in voting on this today,
I
Don?
It's just, the appointment for investing is a calendar year and not a fiscal year. So I found out we only had one meeting in the month of December, so that's why it was on this agenda instead of the one that we usually have the last part of December. So I suppose this can wait. Just won't do any investing.
The other thing, and you actually provided the last 2 years, but there was a list of the investments in the packet, and all we have is the investment policy in our packet this time. And you've actually provided that for us in the past, the last 2 years, I think it is, at my request a while ago.
That the current investment,
Yeah.
we provide it monthly, so I guess it was an oversight on our part. Sorry, we've been a little busy, so I apologize for the oversight.
And you do report that monthly?
Yes, we do.
To the board?
Yes. So that's fine if you want to pull it till the next meeting. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. And just so I understand, then Mr. Sullivan or Supervisor, Sullivan is on the Treasury Oversight Committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, your concerns were because of his position in the investment world. I don't know quite how to put this.
I didn't know if there was any conflict there.
Well,
I
and
think
I
we asked County
understand
Council to
that.
take a look at it.
Because,
here.
but it was brought to my attention that because our county council represents this board, should she be advising us whether or not one of us, you can be on that committee?
I can advise as to any potential conflict of Mr. Sullivan that
Okay.
Supervisor Sullivan may have or not, depending on the policy. Because that would be part of the conflicts with the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
So who would the treasurer use if the treasurer had a question of conflict?
Well, we could set actually up in the office a wall so they could do my deputy, or they could hire outside.
Okay.
Okay. Did we get an answer? So,
I think we.
She can advise to us, and Dawn can either have a wall in the county council's office with the deputy.
Well, I think if there's no conflict, if county council determines there's no conflict of interest, then this is a moot point anyway. I mean,
Well,
it's,
not if
But-
you were
but-
on the other side of the team that thought there was conflict. You would want to have your own attorney advising you if there's a conflict or not. And if both attorneys said there's not a conflict, that's fine, but
Yeah.
you want to be represented
well, I
on both
guess-
sides.
both.
So if you
It's-
would like to, you can meet with the Assistant County Counsel and get his opinion.
I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. This is, you know,
Too late.
But,
So-
but I understand you had concerns, and,
Yeah.
you know, I'm glad you're looking out for protecting the treasurer's office, so,
okay.
but you're fine
will-
with that?
I-
You're fine with that, her,
Like I said, I will review the information again and meet with Deputy County Counsel if that's, if
okay.
that's
So in the meantime,
what the
this is
advice is.
pulled
Okay.
until next meeting.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so that item, well, we already pulled it, so. Did we pull the vote yet?
Yeah, I voted twice on 16.
That's right.
Just in case.
Okay, yes, and we did budget transfers, so now, I'm sorry, we have held up the presentation, but I thought it would go much faster than that. You're welcome to make your presentation.
I got no power on mine. What's going on there?
Oh, good, these are our brand new ones.
On the monitors.
Mine work.
Are you serious?
Oh,
Yes. Okay.
Mine's on. Is yours on, David?
We're setting.
Now it is.
It's just their end.
Yeah,
Somebody unplug you guys.
it was turned off.
Yeah, got to push the on-off switch.
no, the power strip.
Power
is
strip
on
is
the
on.
bottom. It's,
Oh, it's down there.
yeah.
Proceed.
Good morning, Mark Lancaster. I'm the director of the Five County Salmoniid Conservation Program, and we have a 15-minute presentation. So I'll go quick and brief. Most of you, I think, are very familiar with our program, so I'm just going to touch real quickly on our program and then talk about the main point of the presentation, which is a reassessment of county goals and objectives, policies, and implementation around protection of fisheries and water quality. The 5C program represents Humboldt, Del Norte, Mendocino, Trinity, Siskiyou, and Del Norte, Del Norte, Mendocino, Humboldt, Trinity, and Siskiyou, 5 of them. We've been in operation since 1997, trying to find solutions to protecting counties as well as developing credible conservation strategies for fisheries. The number one goal of the program was to strive to provide for the economic and social resources of Northwest California by providing credible conservation. And we think that's very important. To do that over the last 15 years or thereabouts, we've done a number of reports, inventories, assessments, guidance, prioritization programs that have directed the counties or assisted the counties in spending millions of dollars in restoration funds around fisheries and water quality. A number of these products have included inventories of roads for barriers or sediment sources, road maintenance practice manuals, a number of other written projects and policies. Probably the thing that we're most known for is opening up about 140 miles of salmonid habitat in the last 10 years, including 60 projects, 6 here in Del Norte County, that have removed migration barriers and restored stream flow, as well as increased capacity during floods on county roads. We have about 250 barriers throughout the 5 counties on county roads, and so we strive to identify which ones are really important to address and which ones are of less value. In addition, we have a road sediment source inventory and treatment program that the program itself has worked and facilitated 17 projects. Several of the counties have undertaken activities on their own to improve water quality and road drainage. We also routinely put on trainings for road departments, planning departments, even board members to identify ways to work in fisheries and water quality. So we have a very long-standing history in working with you guys. The thing that I like to point to the most, though, is that back in 2001, NOAA Fisheries was looking to list the steelhead as a threatened species here in the northwest part of the state. Had they actually done that, then a lot of the sport fishing economy that we see in Humboldt, Siskiyou, Trinity, and Del Norte counties would have actually disappeared. And certainly in the last 5 years, we've seen in our area robust steelhead and salmon sport fishery on the river system. And they had actually cited among the many reasons not to list was the works of these counties in our program. So we've been very proud of that. They just did a status review here in August of this year and reaffirmed those findings. So after a decade, we can point to a few tangible things and say, yes, we are making a difference. As part of our process back in 1998, we retained the University of California to look at how counties were operating relative to fisheries water quality. A decade later, we came back to see how we're doing, and so the rest of this presentation is to really present to you the reassessment of where the counties are. This assessment was done by an independent third party, Dr. Richard Harris, who this is about the only board meeting he can't make. So we're sort of in an awkward position of presenting the findings of that, but yet telling you we do stand as a third party reviewer of county processes. So with that, I actually want to introduce Sandra Perez, the assistant director and the lead for the reassessment. And I would also acknowledge you have a number of the team members from your county who are here today. And I'd have to take questions afterwards, if I could. Thank you. That's the shortest presentation I've ever done.
So as Mark mentioned, we did an assessment of the 5 counties' policies to see how they've changed since the original reassessment. And the core team was comprised of Dr. Harris, myself, and Mark, Dennis Loda from Mendocino, who provided hydrologist specialties, and Lori Biandini, who was mostly there to record our observations. And then, of course, we had the help of county staff in each county as we went. So the objectives, as Mark summarized, was just to see how the changes in county policies and practices have actually translated to on-the-ground differences, be it in land use planning or road projects or road maintenance. And also to identify any other areas that there might be to improve further. So the process that we used in the reassessment was very similar to that we used in the original. We basically sent out questionnaires to county staffs to gauge their responses on what activities were of the most concern currently, and identify or suggest certain sites that could be visited that would actually demonstrate the application of those policies and practices. And so we met with counties in advance. They suggested sites, and then collectively, we selected some sites that would be practical to get to, but would also sort of illustrate these changes. And so the actual projects were selected based on the activities that each county cited as a concern in their areas. And there's the list of basically the different areas that we looked at for projects. We didn't look at flood control channel maintenance projects specifically, but that topic came up in discussion with the counties about concerns about regulations or I guess difficulties they were experiencing in implementing certain projects. So as far as land development, some of the findings and conclusions were that there's a lot more in place now in terms of policies that the counties have on the books to protect natural resources as compared to the original 1998 assessment. And so that's a big difference, when you look at just the paper side of things, what's on the books now as opposed to before. And also the regulatory agencies have also taken more stricter stances on buffers. For example, in developing and riparian areas, floodplain development is pretty restricted throughout the counties as another difference. And many counties are still making further improvements. For example, Mendocino County is going to change their zoning code ordinance to implement further protections. So it's sort of a continuously evolving improvement. And the projects that we looked at in this current assessment really were reflective of older policies because of the rate of development. You know, you get something coming to the planning department where it's not typically built out for a few years. So what we're looking at now sort of, and land use reflects policies in place at the time that the applications were processed. So that's something to be aware of. As far as the bridges, large infrastructure and capital improvement projects are very much scrutinized by the regulatory agencies. So we found that, by and large, best management practices to protect resources were pretty closely followed in these types of projects. A lot of times, you know, the point of these were to improve fish habitat or water quality or passage of storm flow and debris. As far as stream bank stabilization projects, again, whenever you're doing something in this magnitude and streams or rivers, regulatory agencies are very much involved, and so there's a lot of oversight. And there's a lot of best management practices that are built into the 5C Roads manual that are followed for these kind of projects. And recently, or I guess since the start of the program, the trend has been more to what we call bioengineering, in terms of just using, instead of just using traditional riprap alone, the idea is to incorporate a biological component into the projects to provide for better habitat. And so, by and large, we found that these projects were beneficial to water quality. Storm damage repair. This is a little bit more unusual in that when you have emergencies on roads, though counties have to respond really quickly, they are required to follow up with reporting to agencies and making sure that projects are buttoned up and steps are taken to protect water quality, but the initial response tends to be quicker and more immediate, and then they go back in and notify all the agencies. So there's still oversight, but it just happens in a different way. But even in these situations, there's a lot of best management practices the counties are encouraged to follow that are outlined in the roads manual. And typically after the repairs are implemented, the counties will go back and button things up to a state that would actually improves the site conditions prior to the emergency. Fish passage improvements. These are also large-scale projects and really heavily scrutinized because, of course, necessarily you have salmon in these streams, and because of the protections associated with fish-bearing streams, these projects are very rigorously scrutinized as well, all the way from design through when you button up the actual implementation on the ground. So we found basically that counties followed those best management practices. They tend to incorporate a lot of habitat improvements along with the barrier removals, so that's always more beneficial to the resources. They did find that in some cases the regulatory agencies wanted to require the counties to meet a hydrological criteria that were more costly and difficult to meet, when addressing simply the fish passage issue is cheaper and easier. So there's sort of a fine dance, if you will, and it's case by case on how each project is treated, but they did note those type of conflicts. For road maintenance and repair, the road manual that Mark alluded to has made a pretty significant difference in the way that the counties do things nowadays. There's different chapters in the road manual very specific to the type of activity that you're doing with road maintenance, from ditch cleaning to mowing, vegetation removal, that sort of thing. And so the differences in projects and activities that we looked at was reflected in our review. And stream crossings also very much scrutinized because, you know, anytime you just disturb a large fill in a stream, there's a lot of regulatory oversight. Again, best management practices were followed. Typically, you know, our goal is to try to meet 100-year flow passage and fish passage whenever possible. On to recommendations. So those are basically what we saw and what we found. And recommendations, in terms of land use, there are some unregulated or unauthorized grading that's causing water quality concerns. And so the counties are unique in the way that they handle that. Some have grading ordinances, some have other ways to address it, like Siskiyou is working on a land development manual in their county to address that, which would have similar functions to a grading ordinance. But because it wasn't something that we were able to look at in terms of a specific project for this reassessment, we couldn't make many more specific findings or recommendations regarding that, beyond to say that further investigation is warranted in those counties where that's a concern. The other thing that we've noticed is also some riparian buffers are set aside for development projects as a requirement. The maintenance of those can be lax in some cases, and that's somewhat beyond, the county's control, because once it leaves their jurisdiction or the county has given their reviews, it's up to the homeowners association or the landowner to keep up on that. And so the recommendation there is basically education and managing those areas better for the landowners or the HOAs or whoever's left with the responsibility to do them. And that would be something that a nonprofit like the 5 counties could help with, and in cooperation with local organizations like resource conservation districts or similar. The other thing is what I was alluding to earlier, that the projects we looked at just now are more reflective of policies a few years ago because of how slow development projects are to materialize on the ground. It would be, I think, recommended to do a follow-up assessment in a few years to see how current policies are translating on the ground, because there's always a lag from when the reviews and the approvals are given to when you actually see anything on the ground. And the other thing is that with the recent boom in marijuana cultivation, the counties are struggling in how to address that. And different counties are taking different strategies, but basically in doing so, we would do whatever we could to help them develop protections for water quality and wildlife habitat, which are, of course, incentive-based from our standpoint. But Del Norte wasn't one of the counties that had the most significant concerns in this area, but on the whole, that was something that we definitely got feedback on. For basically the bridges, stream projects, fish passage, it would really help the counties implement projects and do a better job of doing that at cost and within reasonable timeframes if the regulatory process could be streamlined. And we are working on that currently. I mean, we do definitely act as a, in some cases, mediator between the regulatory agencies and the counties as appropriate. But we're also looking to programmatically get coverage for certain activities from agencies like the Water Board. The other thing that we found is that in some projects, contractors ended up doing things that didn't adhere to the best management practices and the way the project was supposed to be implemented. And so, in those cases, actually, the counties gave us feedback that, yeah, based on these situations, we've actually changed the way that we're handling contractors, better oversight, different contracting language. So we just encourage them to maintain close oversight. The other thing is where agencies want to require hydrologic requirements like, well, I want you to build this to pass the 100-year flood flow and meet fish passage, and maybe economically or for other practical reasons, the counties don't feel that that's the best situation. Our recommendation is that fisheries concerns should prevail. And we are working with regulatory agencies on basically ways to sort of achieve both as much as possible, but when it's not, also working with them to see what can be done. emergency projects, road maintenance and management. Basically continue to implement the 5 counties' best management practices manual, attend the annual trainings. That seems to have made a difference as far as the assessment revealed. And again, permitting streamlining would come in handy even for road maintenance projects. We are looking to develop a draft waiver of waste discharge with the Water Board for activities that the counties undertake in compliance with the roads manual. And that's still really preliminary discussions, but that's something that we're looking to do. Residual issues. Well, I made that first point about land development. Of course, limited staff and resources always, the counties would do more if they could, basically is what that means. Restoration, capital improvement, and emergency works. Regulatory relief would not only make things easier, but it would make the county's limited resources go further. And this, basically the roads and the plan departments in each county were involved in this process, but we wanted to call out the people primarily involved, you know, that were out there on the sites with us, and that's the list here. And with that, I'll take any questions, or Mark and I will.
Depends on the question.
Questions from board members?
All I know is that I appreciate the small bit of discussion about the illegal marijuana grows, because it's my understanding, for instance, that Redwood Creek is on the verge of being dewatered, and we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in trying to save the salmon, and we're letting these illegal operations make millions and millions of dollars, take it out of the county, and everyone just kind of looks around like it's a mom and pop marijuana operation when you've seen the photographs of the illegal grading and the dewatering and the environmental hazards, that I would really like, anytime anybody spoke to a regulatory agency, to say, you need to regulate. Here's where you need to regulate. I mean, if a timber company did what one marijuana garden did, the timber company would be in court and shut down.
Yeah.
I don't get why there's not a pushback. I know that people want to be hipped out and all of that kind of thing, but it's absolutely horrific what's happening in our backcountry. And our fish aren't going to survive.
Yeah, I think the agencies are somewhat caught in the, you know, this kind of, with the change in the state laws, really kind of exploded in the last few years, and I don't think they've quite prepared themselves to handle that, frankly. But I know that they are paying more and more attention to that. And where we can, you know, we'll definitely make suggestions.
If I may, I testified at a joint Senate and Assembly hearing here this summer regarding the very issue you're talking about, because we've seen $100,000, $500,000 projects where the water's dried up upstream after we build them, and then we see the big flush of nutrients and the algae blooms.
It's just heartbreaking.
It is, and what Assemblyman Chesbro said to me was, well, we need you to go back to the counties and work with them in the development of their own ordinances to address these fisheries and water quality aspect of this. So to some degree, I would offer up that we would be willing to participate and bring some of the other experiences we have to you guys around water conservation, timing of withdrawal, and some of those matters as you try to address in your ordinances, if you so choose to address in an ordinance those types of issues. But it is a very, very significant issue.
Illegal grading is illegal grading on any ordinance that you have. It's not even a county ordinance. I mean, who comes into a lumber company and declares that it's an illegal grading is the water board.
State.
And it's the state, but the state's sitting on its hands acting like this is not a big issue when we're watching our fish go away.
And that's a good point. At this hearing, a lot of agencies were there, but one that was not was the water board.
But we're working on that.
And I will tell them also.
Have any more questions or comments from board
You want
members?
to tell the projects that are going on in Delaware County, or you plan to do in Delaware County?
Yeah, in fact, later today, we're putting on a workshop on best management practices for the roads department, and then we are working on 6 projects in Delaware County for construction in 2012. 2013 at the latest, including treating a very undersized pipe on Oregon Mountain Road, as well as paving. I knew I should have looked at my notes before I came. Paving on 4 roads, work in cooperation with the roads department. And then we will be looking for additional projects that implement prioritization. We're always looking for funding opportunities to match to actual needs.
These the RAC projects?
These are the RAC projects, yes.
Good job.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sandra.
Do we need public comment on the presentation? No. Okay, we will move on to item number 24, under General Government. Discuss and take possible action regarding a request for a donation Redwood wainscoting to the St. George Reef Lighthouse Preservation Society.
Some time ago, when this building was being renovated, there was a considerable amount of redwood wainscoting on the hallway, the main hallway, and it was recycled, if you want to put it that way. It was stored away, and we received this request about a week ago to utilize some of that wainscoting at the Point St. George Reef Lighthouse. I talked with Ed Fulton, our building maintenance superintendent, who is hoarding this. Been staying on top of this one for a number of years for a use that obviously had historical benefit as well as a need. And at this point, he indicated that nobody has approached him since that has been stored for the use. I don't know the total amount that they'll need for those 2 rooms that are out there at this point. But Ed's not feeling well, so I'm going to take the lead on this one today.
Move to approve.
We would like some direction to at least talk with them, get some of the specifics.
I appreciate the quick motion, but I'm going to decline from committing until I know the amount and the amount that we have and the value, because I question it being a gift of public.
And we need to look at what that amount is, how much they need, and.
But it's a county lighthouse.
County owns the lighthouse.
No.
Yes.
Don't own Point St. George.
We had it, I thought it was transferred over to the Lighthouse Society. I think that was a long-term.
It's a lease. We've leased it.
We own this one.
We will review it
Point, but not
once we get.
Right.
I don't think so, not according to the people that I talked
Point
to.
St. George.
What we would like is the direction to sit down with the society and find out exactly what they need, and then take the next necessary steps. This came in, like I said, within the last week, and the material is there. We need to see whether or not it can be surplused, who it can be surplus to, but the material's there, and this is one of the uses that it was intended for, but we don't know the amounts at this point. Ed was not able to calculate all.
So I'll drop my motion and go with the direction.
Could you give us direction?
Direction.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'd like to know if we own the lighthouse or not.
I would too.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is that we do, and we've leased it to them, but.
I'll look into it. I thought it was a long-term lease too, but I will look. It was turned over to us at one time, but that was a while back, so I'll check. I'll get some clarification.
Did you have a public comment, Richard?
Yeah, I kind of do. I hope the county will look into who is the
Owner?
The owner of.
Gave him direction.
Yeah, I believe that many years ago, the county did transfer the ownership to the Lighthouse Society through the process of the Coast Guard. But I have a question, because the way this is written, is this a donation of money or is it a donation of material?
The request is materials.
Huh?
Material.
The request is materials that are stored. It's recycled material from this building.
Yeah, wood that came out of the hallways in here.
Okay, just, because if it's just material and it's just sitting around somewhere where Ed's got it hid, I just think it should just be given to him.
That's
But if
what
it's
we're-
money, I question allocations of funds.
Buckets of gold.
Thank you,
Buckets
Richard.
of gold.
We will move on to item number 34 under legislative and budget issues.
Many of the legislative issues were spoke to by the supervisors earlier. As far as there are some issues that will be coming forward. The SRS is still something that is out there and our advocates are looking at. From a budget standpoint, just in the last 2 hours, we had sat on a conference call, Neil Lopez and myself yesterday, to get a heads up before the trigger cuts were to be enacted. And at noon today, the governor will have a press release and talk about those trigger cuts. Right now, there was an article in the Sacramento Bee earlier. It talks to about $3.7 billion in what appears to be unrealized revenue. They will not get that this year based on the LAO's account. The first trigger cuts were intended to go towards the UC system and the state system, and also there's some issues that could revolve around childcare, libraries. There's a number of potential impacts statewide. And not all of those would be to Del Norte County, but they're obviously of critical concern. K through 12 schools are also part of that original cut. Now there would be potential for 2 cuts, one immediately in January and one a little bit later. And the governor will release at noontime what his plan is, and so we will see that. It looks like the Sacramento Bee article is very accurate as to what he's going to come forward with, but until he actually says it, we don't know. But the trigger cuts appear to be on the way to be enacted here soon. And as I mentioned, there's a little over $1 billion that they're looking at right now, immediately. It doesn't look like he's going to waive the trigger cuts or put the trigger cuts off. He's actually going to implement those. These have been on the table since the budget was approved. And some of the concerns that all of the CAOs have had were the projections of revenue. And those have unfortunately come to pass, that the revenue projections are not going to be met, or at least don't appear to be met at this point. What we're looking at is the rest of the trigger cuts being rolled over to the 12-13 budget. And at that point, you're looking at probably a $16 billion deficit starting that fiscal year. So the problem persists. And I hate to bring bad news, but that's essentially what we're dealing with and what the reality is right now. And so I hope to hear soon after the 12 o'clock press release as to what he exactly is putting on the table.
Thank you. Item number 35, approve and authorize the chair to sign a letter regarding the National Flood Insurance Program. Do we have speaking to that?
Guess I will if nobody else is, once I read it.
I brought this forward, Jim.
I'm not sure who actually submitted this one. Excuse me?
Our advocate?
Our advocate did?
Yeah.
I'm going to jog my memory here. This is actually, this is a request to Senator Boxer and Senator Feinstein to support the legislation and reauthorization in the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program. Typically, that would go through the Community Development Department, and what you're all aware of would be the policies that are associated with this. This legislation could have significant effect on a lot of places, and in here, our advocate primarily talks about the Klamath Glen because of the levy and the fact that at this point they're not obligated to have flood insurance, but they would be because of the new mapping. And so we're asking for a letter of support. Hopefully we can get some movement on this and take some of this risk off of these people that are going to be subject to this additional fee through having to have a policy.
Move to approve.
A motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? Hearing none. You just need,
Just need your direction.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Madam Chair, under that 34 budget stuff, I'm not going to talk about any legislation we already did, but under the frame of opportunity rather than doom and gloom, at the same time that you're looking at budget cuts and shortfalls, the governor did issue an executive order the other day that is basically taking, Del Norte County took the lead in this a long time ago, and it's a review of all departments, making sure that they have goals and measurable outcomes, zero-based budgeting, if not performance-based budgeting, and to look at every state program that has been pushed down to the county level to see whether or not it yields a benefit or whether it is effective or whether it should be terminated. So Sacramento is listening, and it's great.
Thank you. Capital projects?
Familiar,
As of Thursday, we hope to have the last material moved from the Klamath Townsite boat launch. There was a lot of work done over the last week to 2 weeks to find a site that actually would accept it at a reasonable amount. We were able to find one in the Klamath Glen, and a permit was issued by the Community Development Department in short order in compliance with all of the requirements in order to move many tons of material that were left over from that project. What that results in is that there are only a couple of items left to do, a little bit of curbing and some striping, and then that project should be buttoned up and finished, and we will have a ribbon cutting in the future. The project was delayed a little bit. Obviously, there were some factors, whether it was weather early in the season. The whale didn't have significant effect on it, but it did obviously open some eyes, and we had a lot of biologists down there at that time. So as we went through that, there were some cautionary or precautions taken at that point. But that project is now about wrapped up, and we hope that it will be of a great benefit to the sport fishermen, the tribal fishermen, and our visitors down there, because it takes up a large gap between Roy Rook and the mouth of the river. Again, it's a pretty significant project, ending with a lot of bank stabilization in that area, as well as riparian vegetation that we'll have to monitor for the next 4 years. Good project, and hopefully we'll get the board down there to be able to see it firsthand and get it opened up.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Thank those. Yeah, Merry Christmas to everyone.